These guys created the world's best-selling t-shirt brand overnight, just because they're funny. It's one of the biggest recent success stories in fashion, not widely discussed and probably not well known amongst most of y'all. Here, we're all about sneakers or streetwear, and we often talk about brands that are really recognizable due to their logos, whether they're big names like Celine, Palm Angels, Philip Plein, or smaller ones like Cortez or Antisocial Social Club back in the day. But this time, we're going to talk about a whole different ballgame. No logo, not much of a design, nor a scarcity strategy like Supreme with extremely limited stocks to drive up hype. No, it's literally a machine churning out millions of t-shirts selling over 50,000 per day, generating hundreds of millions of dollars estimated to be worth nearly 700 million. And yet it didn't even exist 5 years ago. And the most astonishing part of all of this? The guys who went on this adventure with just brains and 3,000 bucks decided to dive into a market where they were literally face to face with all the giants of the industry, with no means to differentiate themselves through their products, since their brand is simply selling basic t-shirts. So, how did these unknown guys manage to convince millions of people around the world to buy their t-shirts instead of those from H&M or any other fast fashion brand? Well, because they were funny. At least that's part of the answer. But in this video, we'll obviously delve deeper to try to grasp the reason behind the massive and rather improbable success of True Classic. It's one of the recent brands, if not the brand, that has rapidly carved its place in the ultra-competitive fashion industry in recent years.
Hello, future millionaires.
New video. As you've probably guessed from the long list of videos we've already produced in the last 7 months, many of them are dedicated to dissecting the history and reasons behind the success of streetwear brands that have been or were in demand. By the way, we are busting our asses doing all of that, so you should probably like and subscribe in my opinion. Just do it! Among all these brands, those who have been following our videos have likely noticed that there's more or less the same pattern that repeats itself, whether it's brands founded over 20 years ago like Bape or more recent ones like Cortez. And that's normal. The recipe to success in streetwear has remained the same for over 20 years. A strong and impactful logo, playing on scarcity and exclusivity, creating a loyal brand following, and often, for the hype to build quickly, you need some connections in the industry. But all of that has nothing to do with True Classic, a brand that sells basic t-shirts which seemingly have nothing particularly extraordinary about them. At first glance, it might even seem completely uninteresting to talk about them. But to understand why we absolutely need to discuss them, and especially why fashion entrepreneurs watching this video should take notes, well, as usual, let's set a bit of context. The cotton t-shirt, as we know it today, dates back to the early 20th century, and hasn't changed much over the years. We've obviously seen new colors, new cuts, new ways of sewing patches, new brands distinguishing themselves with logos or prints, but overall, it's the same product. The cotton t-shirt, you know? And precisely when you have such a basic and essential item in a wardrobe that's been around for so long, generally the market for that item is huge. Whether it's shirts, socks, beanies, or t-shirts, these are products you can easily find in all colors, cuts, and sizes all over the world. And there's a high chance that if you want to buy a basic white t-shirt, well, you're more likely to turn to industry giants that have been doing this for over 40 years. Whether it's fast fashion brands like H&M or Uniqlo, bland basic brands like Hanes, or like classic ass brands like Hugo Boss or Calvin Klein. And personally, I would have never believed that 3 guys could suddenly step in and compete with industry giants overnight by selling this type of product. And yet, Ryan Bartlett, the founder of True Classic, had a completely opposite opinion. He was convinced that they could jump in, be themselves, and make millions since he thought there was a gap in this market.
You got jokes!
Apparently, the dude was right, but before succeeding, he had to fail a lot. Before launching this idea, he was a college dropout, as they say in the field, a guy who decided to drop out of his university studies in music production to pursue his own projects. His ambition was initially to make it big in jazz. Well, how should I put it?
Mission failed. We'll get 'em next time.
For a short period of his life, he played the piano in restaurants every night to make a living. And let's be clear, he wasn't making Drake-level fees for performances. He barely had enough to get by, but he persevered because he believed that he could make it. Well, that lasted for 2 years before he finally realized that his moment of glory would never come. Or at least, not in music. He gave up on his dream and ended up working for a digital marketing agency. Even though it wasn't his passion, he learned something extremely important. Generating website traffic can even be profitable. Extremely profitable, in fact. From there, he realized that there was a lot of money to be made online. He tried to capitalize on that by launching several niche websites at a time when blogs were easily the biggest printers with ads and affiliations. Unfortunately, those printers ran out of ink too. He even mentioned that he created almost 80 websites, all of which failed. But his perseverance eventually paid off. In 2017, he decided to sell his knowledge and start his own digital marketing agency to help brands. And finally, he tasted one of his first real successes.
Finally, inner peace.
After accumulating a lot of knowledge and quite a bit of money as well, it was in 2019 that he got the idea to create True Classic. What motivated him to dive into the t-shirt business was his belief that the fit of most t-shirts was completely off, or you had to spend $40 for a well-fitted cotton t-shirt.
$40?
Look, man.
His vision of a good fit wouldn't sit well with streetwear enthusiasts, who swear by boxy, thick t-shirts that got the blocky-ass Roblox style. For him, it was about t-shirts with a snug fit around the arms and shoulders, not too tight around the belly, complementing the male body shape without feeling constrained or looking like a massive sausage for guys with a bit of a belly. And well, I don't know about you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's particularly revolutionary. You can even find similar stuff on Amazon for a few bucks. But he was convinced he had something amazing on his hands. That's why he assembled a team of specialists to bring the project to life. Ryan Bartlett, as you've probably caught on, was the marketing specialist. He recruited someone named Nick Ventura, who had a background in textiles and had recently sold his clothing brand Venly. To top it all off, he brought in Matt Winnick, the financial expert of the team. They had the whole dream team to figure out how to create this perfect fitting t-shirt, establish a marketing strategy to sell it, and properly manage the project's finances. And although they were quite experienced, sadly though, they weren't exactly the wolves of Wall Street. But they all had their own projects, a certain financial standing, and a fair amount of experience. At the start, they didn't go all out on the project, as they invested no more than $3,000 to test the True Classic recipe, and the results quickly turned out to be very promising. In the first month, the brand generated $2,500 in sales. In the second month, they multiplied it by 10, selling $25,000 worth of t-shirts. 1 year later, they were making almost $500,000 per month. And this success was primarily due to their Facebook ads, where they focused on two things: humor, creating funny sketches about their t-shirts. Well, it's American Dad humor. It might not make everyone laugh, but I'll let you check out an excerpt.
The shirt doesn't highlight your best attribute.
What are my best attributes?
You're a really good dad.
Yeah, I am.
I'm gonna let y'all be the judge of that game.
And the second thing they kept repeating over and over again was the revolutionary fit of their t-shirts. Snug around the shoulders, arms, and pecs, but loose underneath.
It's True Classic. It's tight on the chest and shoulders and arms.
In addition to using corny jokes to hook on people to buy their t-shirts, they used questionable persuasion methods. Let's not beat around the bush, they made some really biased comparisons, taking the worst fitting t-shirt ever made with the worst imaginable cut. It wasn't even properly ironed. They were almost about to add oil stains and spit on it. They presented it somewhat like this: True Classic is excellent and everything else is pure ass. In a nutshell, it's kind of like if I took an iPhone 14 and a Samsung Galaxy from 2012 and told you iPhones wipe Android.
That's illegal.
They're also criticized for playing on men's insecurities and their dad bod, as they call it, almost engaging in false advertising, making people believe that if they don't like their appearance, well, it's not because of their bodies, but because of their t-shirts, and that True Classic t-shirts could be a solution to this problem of self-esteem. And honestly, we understand that it's sarcasm, but it's an American brand that mainly sells to Americans. And you know, some American folks aren't always the sharpest tools in the shed, so you end up with guys that are a bit lost, expecting to change their bodies by buying True Classic t-shirts. So let's say that they're a bit disappointed with the results. Just like this guy, and well, buddy, what did you expect, man? Their marketing is incredibly well crafted. It all started with a product that targeted the right people with the same repeated message spun with humor and creativity, and it really paid off. And even though, truth be told, what they did wasn't particularly sophisticated, whether it's their products, which are ultimately just basic t-shirts made in China, Egypt, or Vietnam, their websites, a simple Shopify store that they optimized over the years, and their traffic sources, nothing more or less than Facebook ads, which they simply repeated over and over again when an ad worked well. In essence, it shows us something quite important. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to specialize in something and execute it excellently. To give you an idea of the scale, these guys spend over $100,000 on Facebook advertising every day, which brings in almost 600 grand in revenue almost every day. Yeah, You heard that right. The explosion of the brand is absolutely mind-blowing, something we've never seen before in fashion. We're talking about $150 million in revenue in 2022, and the brand was created just 3 years before that. To put it into perspective, True Classic even outperforms historical brands, like the French sportswear brand Le Coq Sportif, which generated $123 million in revenue in 2022. Honestly, it's so unbelievable that I'm starting to wonder if they're just messing with us, given that their financial statements aren't public.
I smell bullshit.
True Classic never needed investors. They sold a ton of t-shirts, but not only that, they started expanding their range by selling jackets, shirts, polos, underwear, jeans, well, the entire arsenal of the American dad. And we owe this success mainly to their convincing abilities and their execution down to the millimeter. Because I won't draw you a picture, their fashion is really nothing exceptional. Whether it's the fit, the quality, or even the value for the money, according to many reviewers, it's nice, but quite unremarkable, and not at all transcendent as they claim in their ads. In short, you don't necessarily need True Classic to have these kinds of pieces, but they've managed to get purchases by reaching their customers before other brands with an inexpensive product that everyone ultimately needs. Most of their customers are dads who aren't particularly interested in fashion. Not only that, it's even women who buy products for their husbands. And even if this brand doesn't resonate with you at all, as you're probably not the target audience, I think it's relevant to tell their story and discover this kind of success story, which is pretty damn different from what we're used to seeing on this channel. Now it's up to you to tell me what you think of this, and especially whether you find it normal that 3 guys selling t-shirts make more money than the biggest French sneaker brand.